Hello, I'm Matt Bergman, and you are listening to the Punk Rock Libertarians Podcast, episode 265. I'm here tonight with Jared Schneiderman,
Hey guys,
Philip Dassing,
What's up, all you cool cats and kittens?
he's still
Kyle
on that.
Wagner.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Yeah, and we're very excited about this next guest. This is Jeff Deist. He is the president of the Mises Institute. He was also the former chief of staff for Ron Paul. So, and the really cool thing about Jeff Deist is, for me, is he's like, apparently he's got some background in punk rock. So, Jeff, I've been following you for years on Facebook, and I've just like seen here and there, you've just posted about some like punk rock. I believe you were like into Black Flag back in the day.
Well, I mean, this is just a function of age. I'm a lot older than you guys. So this is just the era. I mean, that's what it was in the 80s. When I was a kid. It looks like you're wearing a Naked Reagan shirt. Is this true?
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for a while I went through that kind of Midwest Chicago phase. There were a lot of great bands out of Chicago apart from Naked Reagan. And actually before they got famous, Soul Asylum was kind of an interesting band.
Yeah.
Back in the day from Minneapolis, which Minneapolis obviously spawned Husker Du and a lot of bands. But I don't know that I've ever alluded to or posted anything on social media to that effect. I mean, my situation was just in the mid '80s. I was a teenager at the time, middle teens, and so my older brother was listening to the Clash, the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, that sort of thing. So when you're a teenager and you've been listening to Styx or Party with the Wagon or something, and you hear, Pretty Vacant by the Sex Pistols, all of a sudden you kind of have this epiphany, and you say, "Wow, that's better." And so that was pretty much my story. And I just happened to be a young person at the time when Black Flag and Dead Kennedys and my all-time favorite band TSOL were really just peaking in Southern California in the 1980s. And in Orange County, where I lived, there was a big scene that was sort of centered around Huntington Beach. And silly as it sounds now, it was silly, but as silly as it sounds now, there was kind of this idea that Huntington Beach was very different from Hollywood and LA, and that there was a competition. This is the typical thing that happens we see this in libertarianism all the time, factions. So this is the typical kind of mentality, and LA was where the Cathay de Grande was, and there were bands like X, and it was sort of fancier or more big time. And in Orange County, in places like the Cuckoo's Nest in Anaheim, it was, we have our own thing. And so, it was just a place and time. But for me, my sort of time in that, once I was over, it was very much over. And I pretty much got away from music altogether, didn't listen to anything. And because of the crossover stuff that was happening at the time, bands like Anthrax and DRI and Corrosion of Conformity, metal and punk were melding, at least for me. And so I'm really don't listen to any music at all today. Haven't for many, many years. If I were going to, it would probably be something pretty generic. Megadeth, Motorhead, Metallica, something along those lines, and that would be about that. But music doesn't animate me the way it did when I was a kid, that's for sure. But it was a fun time, and so everybody thinks that the music when they were young and coming up is the best music, and everyone sort of stays frozen in time. And so boomers do this. And Generation X, my generation does it too. So it's not that I think the music of that time was so great. And frankly, some of it sounds pretty bad now. It didn't have a lot of staying power. Like say what you will, you can still listen to a Led Zeppelin song.
For sure.
So a lot of it didn't have a lot of staying power, but my thing is, somewhere probably late 80s to early 90s, I just stopped listening to anything new. So as a result, I have no sense of new metal or that sort of thing. I just don't have anything to judge it by.
Yeah. So, two questions: how old are you, and also what years were you going to punk shows?
I just turned 53, so I was going from like 80, 85 to 90, sort of in there.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. So, I also saw a picture recently of you playing guitar in a band.
Yeah, this is this same period, long time ago.
Yeah. So, like, what kind of band was this?
Not a lot of skill, kind of band.
So, I mean, some of my favorite bands that don't have a lot of skill.
Yeah, but also you got to remember this was where we had fake guitars, like we had fake Fender Telecasters. There used to be a Japanese guitar company called Hondo
Yeah.
that made shitty, cheap guitars. I mean, this is the kind of level that we're at. We're talking about a 30-watt PV amp that someone puts on a folding chair.
Yeah.
So
I was there.
So it's at waist level. I mean, this is pretty bare bones and not good. So I'm the farthest thing from a musician.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess like you went from music like straight on into libertarianism, I take it.
Yeah, that was really at the same time. Again, I owe a lot to my older brother because he was reading Reason magazine way back in the 80s when that was new. And because of him, I just never really went through a phase otherwise. So that's just, again, something I fell into rather than something I sought out.
So how did it come about that you went to working for Ron Paul?
Well, in '88, he ran for president. I went to see him at a Ramada Inn hotel
Wow.
in Orange, California, the city of Orange in Orange County, California. No, I'm sorry, it was in Santa Ana, California. That hotel is still there. I think it's something else now. It's really gone downhill. And of course, back then, to even know Ron Paul was coming to your town, you had to be involved with a local LP or get some sort of physical mailer because we didn't have internet and cell phones. So I just got to meet him briefly in '88 and sort of became friends with some people who worked for him at the time and stayed in touch with them over the years. And I went off and became a lawyer for many, many years, 15 years, I guess. And then it just one of those things that happened that I ended up reconnecting with Ron through some of the people who were around him and worked for him. So it's I've known him sort of since '88. And what, you guys are born like mid '90s, most of you?
No, I was born in 1980.
Oh, okay.
I was in '88.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Were the other guys born at any time?
I said '88, dude.
Okay. I said Jared said 88.
81 for me.
81.
80. So I didn't know you were that old, Kyle.
Coming up on 40.
Yeah.
Phil.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just pretty amazing to me that you've really been around Ron Paul since like 1988. It's like, wow, that's really cool. And I guess like most of us, I guess everybody else here is quite a bit younger. And like I gotten into libertarianism like around the year 2000, but I don't think I heard of Ron Paul until like maybe like 2006 or 2007. And I was just like, wow, there's this like really old congressman who's like believes the same things that I do, and somehow some place in Texas is able to like make him their representative. He like blew my mind.
Yeah, I don't think most people heard of him until '07, '08, really. So you were early. And as far as being elected a congressman, it really goes to a couple of things: his skill, in his likability. For years and years, there were a lot of people reelecting him in his district. And remember, a congressional district is 700,000 odd people. And so his opponents were never able to paint him as the radical or the extremist that that they thought he was, and that he is relative to them. But the reason for that is because he was a medical doctor, because he had a family and a bunch of kids, because he'd always comported himself in a dignified manner in his personal life. He'd always been well respected as a doctor, delivered 4,000 babies throughout his district. So think how many times he went out at 3 a.m. in rural South Texas to some hospital somewhere to deliver a baby in his car. So it was awfully hard for them to overcome that. And a lot of libertarian-ish, whether they're LP or not, a lot of candidates just didn't have that. The name ID from being an OBGYN and otherwise. But what a lot of people don't know is that he was in Congress in the 1970s, mid 70s to early 80s, and then went back to being a doctor. But when he decided to come back, he ran in 1996. And at the time, George W. Bush was governor of Texas. Karl Rove was in the Texas State House as, I think, the governor's chief of staff at the time. And Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House in Congress. And so they didn't want Ron back. They didn't want him in Congress. So what they did was they went down to his district and they talked to the Democrat, a guy named Greg Laughlin, who held the seat, and they got him to switch parties. Because it was considered probably a Republican seat, and so they got him to switch parties and promised him all this committee assignments and money for defeating Ron, and then Ron beat him anyway. So so George W. Bush, Karl Rove, and Newt Gingrich were all basically out to get him and keep him out of Congress, and they didn't succeed. And then in the general election in 1996, the Democrat he ran against had an ad on TV that said Ron Paul would legalize heroin or something like that if he had his way. And so Ron ran an ad that showed him in his medical doctor's, the white coat or whatever.
Yeah.
And with all these moms saying like, Ron Paul is my doctor. He delivered my 4 sons or something.
Yeah. You can't top that.
Done.
That's hilarious.
So Ron's been up against it. People don't understand how shabbily he's been treated over the years. And that's why I get defensive and pissed when libertarians treat him shabbily, because he's put up with a lot of bullshit. And way before any of this stuff, way before Ron Paul was Ron Paul, in 1988, he was flying around the country, in the middle seat on some crappy Southwest flight, and then showing up and hoping the local LP guy arrived at the airport in their junky car to take him to go talk to 30 people maybe at the Denny's. So he put in a lot of time in the wilderness, and he spent a lot of time away from his family, a lot of lucrative time away from his medical practice, and got treated very poorly by the Republicans and the congressional leaders. So that, he doesn't worry about that stuff, but I guess I would call myself his friend. That stuff bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's easily the most important person for liberty in our lifetime. Nobody else has brought more people to liberty than Ron Paul. I mean, there's just nobody. It's
well, maybe I don't know. Maybe Ayn Rand has. Maybe who knows who has. But he certainly did a lot. And
okay, well, at least in the past 10 years. Or 15 years, 20 years. I mean, it's like,
right.
I don't know. It's like the liberty movement that I've experienced. It's like, 90% of the fuckers in there heard about it from Ron Paul.
Right.
And yeah, it does. It blows my mind when you've got somebody like Nick Sarwark talking shit on the man. It's it really pisses me off.
Well, it's unnecessary, unhelpful.
Yeah,
Say the
well,
least.
It's anti-libertarian, and he's like the supposed to be the head of the Libertarian Party,
Right.
And it's not a libertarian thing to do.
I mean, even if you didn't like the guy, it's like there's probably a list of 100 people before him that that you could be talking about that are doing far worse things in the world. To spend so much time focusing on one of the great champions of liberty just seems really, really confusing, actually. But
well, there's a reason for that, and that is that people want libertarianism to morph into some sort of public policy option, as opposed to a ground up movement that's anti-public policy at all.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that we don't need public policy, that people can decide for themselves. And if we're going to have government, or if we must have government, it ought to be as decentralized and localized as possible. Well, a lot of people in libertarian movement don't agree with that and don't like that. And they want to turn it into what I would consider a self-actualization movement. In other words, for me, libertarian is an adjective. It's not a noun. In other words, you guys should be libertarian punk rock or punk rock liberty. So the goal is liberty.
Yeah, that's our Twitter handle.
Right. We all want political liberty, regardless of who we are. We all want political liberty. We see that as a baseline for having a humane society and for giving us all as individuals the best opportunity to flourish. And that's fine. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's proven throughout the 20th century that more laissez-faire governments produce far infinitely better results for their citizens. So from a purely utilitarian or consequentialist stance, this is obvious. But beyond that, I think libertarianism in the United States especially has morphed into a feel-good sort of self-help thing, and it's all about self-actualization. That you just need to be free, not so much in the political sense, but in the cosmic sense or in the psychic sense. That you ought to be free from all these hang-ups. You ought to be free from other people judging you. You ought to be free from having bills, having a landlord. You ought to be free from hierarchy. You shouldn't have to have a boss. You shouldn't have to show any respect to your parents, or you should never have anything in your life as silly as religion. That's for irrational dopes. And so what this you put this in a blender, and what it sounds like is a self-actualization movement. Now, it is true that political liberty does create the best environment for self-actualization. I don't dispute that. But being a libertarian, or being a good libertarian, or being more or less libertarian is not the goal. The goal is to get political liberty, and then we can all go be whatever we want to be. And I think sometimes those two things get confused, because I don't care how good of a libertarian I am. I don't care if I'm more or less libertarian than someone. I don't really care about as much about the philosophical, the ANCAP stuff, or whatever that is. I mean, if we say, hey, can we move towards greater political liberty, on any issue with any allies for any reason, then we ought to do that, starting with war and peace, I would say. And then number two would be the Fed, which is really the fount of all evil in American society, or a lot of it anyway. Yeah. But I think being libertarian is not a goal. Political liberty is a goal. And I think it's the former creates a lot of the factionalism.
Mm-hmm. So is that sort of the thick versus thin libertarian argument in there?
Well, I think it's related. I think that's certainly bound up in it. And a lot of, look, people on the right think libertarians left wing. People on the left think libertarians right wing. I get that.
Yeah.
But that's how we're wired. And I understand that. But I think we've made a fetish out of trying to be hoity-toity and say, well, we're neither left nor right. Okay, that like this is like you're supposed to get a merit badge or something for that.
Well, I mean, some people have, but then some people talk about libertarianism like it's pretty extreme right, and other people talk about it like it's pretty extreme left.
Yeah, I mean, the cultural power in our world is left wing. It just is. Corporations, government, media, entertainment, sports, it just is. I mean, if you want to be a radical nonconformist today and you're 20, you have to go be a Mormon and have 7 kids. Okay. Having a sleeve of tattoos and nose rings and going around at an anti-Trump rally is about the most conformist thing you can possibly do if you're 20 years old today. And so we got to recognize this. And I feel like Libertarianism Inc. has said, well, we all have to adopt a set of left cultural precepts. And a lot of those precepts I personally reject for myself. So that as a result, I'm considered a right libertarian. Okay, fine. That, whatever. But I don't, those are appendages. Those are appurtenances. Those are not, to me, something I have to accept as a libertarian person. Again, adjective, not noun. So, I understand different people see it different ways, but the Trump thing, I think, exposed a lot of people. I mean, you had millions and millions of Americans who didn't want to vote for Hillary, but who also didn't think, Jeb Bush or John Kasich were the next second coming. Okay, there's nothing wrong with those people. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of them in the state where I live, of Alabama, which I'm sure the anti-Trump people think is some deep red Trump stronghold. It's anything but. I think people here would have preferred to vote for Ted Cruz or Mike Huckabee or someone like that. But they sort of held their noses and voted for Trump. And so libertarians scoffed at this. Libertarians have scoffed at Trump voters since day one. They've hated Trump voters since day one. And basically, they've exposed themselves as the same kind of elitists that the Atlantic Magazine or Washington Post or any of these people are. That anybody who voted for Trump is racist, retrograde, deplorable, beyond the pale. And that's just bullshit.
It is.
They should have looked at Trump. It had nothing to do with Trump. It had nothing to do with his policies, so-called. It had nothing to do with his cabinet. It had nothing to do with his Twitter. The lesson from Trump is that 60 odd million Americans were that fed up that they were ready to go off the reservation and vote for this unknown TV reality star guy. He won as a third party. A third party candidate won the 2016 election. He had no support from the Republican Party, no ground game. All he had from them was ballot access. He didn't even spend any money. They certainly didn't spend any of their money on him. So in effectively, a third party candidate won the 2016 election. And all libertarians could do is sit there and talk about how terrible this was. No, it wasn't terrible. It was a crack in the foundation. And they were too caught up in, hatred of rural and red state people to see that. And that irritates me.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering now, though, is that really still the case? Because, I mean, as we see the past, what's been going on with this whole shutdown and this debacle going on with this COVID-19 stuff, I wonder if still people are still going to run to their corners come 2020. And I mean, because I feel like anyone on the leftists or Democrats, they would say the same things about anyone who had an R next to their name about being racist and hateful and misogynistic. Like that would be flung at anyone at this point. And I want to know if that's, I don't know. I just feel like people are still going to run to their corners. And I can't, for a moment, I see why the allure was for having a third party. Like he was almost like a third party candidate, which I totally get that. But I feel like now, he's just more just now fallen into the Republican, establishment at this point with some of his policies. And I mean, even today he was making threatening tweets at Iran. I'm just wondering to know if is that still going to be the case come 2020? How do you foresee that?
Well, I mean, he's obviously crazed. I don't know what to say. I wish he had just announced he was going to run for one term. That would have been a stroke of genius. But he can't help himself. He is what he is. But let's not forget, they called W a racist and a sexist and a homophobe.
Yeah.
They called Mitt Romney a
racist.
Yeah. This is what the left does. This is what they've got. And we shouldn't do it. We should be better than that. I think, America's actually a pretty friendly and welcoming place. And what the world needs is a third party that shuts its trap about culture and sticks to economics. That's what it needs. It needs a third party that shuts its pie hole about anything other than, look, we got an entitlement crisis. Look, we got a debt crisis. Look, we can't pay for these wars. Look, the Fed is out of control. Look, your savings are being eaten up. Look, Washington will never change. The story tells itself. It's not that hard. This is what I like third parties. I wish they did better, but Look at Ross Perot, 1992. He got 20 million votes. 20 million votes. That was 20% of the electorate. I mean, that was unbelievable. That was like a tidal wave. 20 million votes as a third-party candidate probably cost Bush Sr. the election to Clinton. That's debated, but nonetheless, 4 years later, everybody just went back to voting R&D.
Yeah.
So it's very tough.
Yeah, didn't they actually impose like a bunch of like regulations to like further knock third parties out after Ross Perot?
Well, the ballot access thing is obviously criminal, and it's obviously designed to do what it does.
Protect
the
the
other
duopoly.
problem is that we don't have a parliamentary system. Unfortunately, the Constitution basically says the House and Senate can operate by the rules that they make for themselves, for those two bodies, and so the House and Senate made all these rules over the years that say, well, there's a majority party. The majority party gets to control committees. And as a result of committees, they control the legislation. And so because the control at the committee level is so powerful, everybody wants to be a committee chair. You can only be a committee chair if you're an R and a D. To be an R and a D, you have to raise lots and lots of money and have a safe district so that you can give extra money to the party. That's how you move up. And so we've got this lockdown system but in a country of 328 million people, we don't have a single Green Party or Libertarian or Peace and Freedom or Social Democrat. Come on. In a country as diverse as this, I mean, in a sense, and Henry Hazlitt actually wrote a book about this, a little known book, but in a sense, I think a parliamentary system would be better for libertarians because at least we could have, 5 or 10% of Congress, let's say.
Right.
And then use that 5 or 10% to form coalitions, in support or opposition on various bills and that sort of thing. I would love to have some of that leverage.
So I got to ask Jeff, with the creation of the Mises Caucus, have you registered libertarian yet, or
no, not a voter.
Yeah,
not a voter.
It doesn't surprise me.
No,
I was just curious.
No, I'm not going to join a party that hates the Mises Institute and hates Ron Paul. Fuck that.
Oh, so I guess the Mises Caucus, I guess they're trying to like join it and change it from within. Do you think there's no fruit in that situation?
I don't know. I know Michael Heiss. I like him. He's a great guy.
Yeah, we do too. He's been on the podcast a couple times.
Yeah, I'm the Maryland coordinator for the Mises Caucus, so that's what we're trying to do, Jeff. We're trying to get the party to focus on what really matters.
Good.
That's the only thing we can do right now.
Yeah. So coming on, you've been wonderful, and we'd love to have you on again sometime.
Yeah. Sorry for that F-bomb.
No, that's typical.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Like
man.
we said, if you didn't say the F-bomb, we would have cut you off sooner.
Hey, look, I'll tell you what, we have these really sweet brand new Mises Institute hoodies.
They look nice.
From Under Armour. Okay, they got the little Under Armour thing. It just says Mises Institute. It's got the little crest on the sleeve, by the way. I guess these are cold gear, so some of you are still in states that are cold. So I'll tell you what, hit me up on Twitter at Jeff Deist, and the first person to message me, I'll tell you what, with the name of the intro song on the Human Action Podcast, we'll get one of these bad boys sent to them gratis. So how's that?
Awesome.
Sounds
That
good.
sounds awesome, man.
Are you guys?
Awesome.
Are the hosts of this podcast exempted from this contest?
Probably. I would think so.
All right. So at any rate,
Well, I listen
It's
to the
that hard to
podcast.
figure out. It's
Phil's
not
an
a-
actual listener.
Phil,
Yeah,
not a
so-
famous
he doesn't
song,
have like a
but-
5XL hoodie, anyways, Phil.
Hey, we got no. I can tell we got up to double XL on this, and it actually runs
So I'm
pretty
good.
big. It's a great hoodie, and people are really loving them because it's got a real Under Armour feel as opposed to like a corporate gift feel, if you know what I mean.
Nice.
For sure.
Yeah, they look
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, Jeff.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Cool.
you guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
thanks
take
a lot.
care. We
Thanks for coming.
appreciate it, man.
All right. Take care.
So, guys, I guess now we are on to Corona.
On to
Shit.
Corona.
On to Corona.
That fast? We're not gonna pause. There's gonna be no transition.
There's going to be no. I don't know.
'Cause I got some things to
We
talk
have
about.
we have watchers, bro. We've
Yeah.
got 15 people on. We don't want to lose them.
Okay. All right. So, what do you want to say, Phil?
No, I just said a lot of people shitting on Jeff in the comments and Ron Paul apparently too.
It's not
Actually,
a
no,
lot.
it's
It's
just
one
one.
dude.
It's one guy. Yeah, it's one.
A lot of people. Phil, why are you trying to blow this shit up, dude?
Well, I mean, we do have like
Phil's trying
we
to
have like
fluff this,
100.
dude.
Well,
we have
he pointed out
160 people watching, and
he pointed out the blood and soil thing, which we all know about.
ugh,
And then
so
he pointed
terrible.
out another thing, which I don't see really anything wrong, but apparently at some point Jeff said Kaepernick's sin is not ignoring the state's anthem; it's repeating the abject lie that America is deeply racist. I don't see anything wrong with that statement.
Right, me neither.
I mean, are there people in America that are racist? Sure. Are there institutions that are racist? Yeah, but I mean, are we defining America by the government? Are we defining America by like the shittiest people in America? Are we defining, America as Carl Hess would define them as, the people, the land, the
Like a culture.
yeah, the culture. And I don't, I don't buy that it's deeply racist.
No, Kaepernick's not problem isn't with America as a whole. It's specifically with the police and their treatment of black people.
I think yeah, I mean that is what he built his thing around.
Oh,
Uh,
and Betsy Ross too.
So you're saying that he's never said this, Kyle?
I don't think anyone's saying that.
No, I mean, I'm just saying Kaepernick's whole platform is mostly focused on police brutality. It's not just on overall generic cultural racism. I mean, maybe he loops that in, but his primary gripe is with the way the police treat black people. And I don't. There's certainly been cases where you could say, well, he has a point. A lot of times, I think the cases they choose as examples don't make a lot of sense, like the Zimmerman case, because Zimmerman was not a police officer. He was an overzealous community watch guy,
Right.
and they act like he was an officer. He was not an officer.
Yeah.
He was a civilian. So that you can't throw that into your police brutality case when that particular case was not a police officer. But there's other times where the police have overreacted and shot and killed black people. They've shot them in the backs, and so there have been examples where they were in the wrong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've never objected to any of that from Kaepernick. I do sort of. I don't like the framing of it as a primarily racist issue, though. I think it is a problem of police power. And, are some cops racist? Sure, maybe. But, there are plenty of white people that have been killed by the cops. And I think it's more white people have been killed by the cops. There's also more white people in the country.
Yeah.
But, like...
Okay, well, that's where BLM falls flat for me. It's like they just don't have the inability to, like they never got on with the whole Bundy Ranch thing standoff. Like, they never got on board. They were never like, yeah, dude, fuck the cops. And instead they actually there was actually a story where the person was criticizing because they were like abolished or something like fuck the BLM, and so the Black Lives Matter got all really pissed off about it, but in fact it was Bureau of Land Management what they had their shirts are said. Yeah, so like that, it's just, I don't know, that's where they fall flat to me. So that's why they think the whole racist narrative is just it's such a small view on such a bigger problem.
You know what I really wanted to ask Jeff? I mean, I wasn't going to do it when he was a guest here, but
when he was here and we were supposed to. You didn't want to ask him on camera.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt, but
you could have interrupted.
What I'm really curious about is the blood and soil speech that people mention in the comments. I mean, that's what he's.
And
that's
actually,
the controversy.
Kyle, listen, if you go on YouTube and you type in Jeff Deist, Tom Woods, you'll find he's been on the Tom Woods show like 4 or 5 times, something like that, maybe more. And then I believe like it's either the last time he was on there or the time before that. Tom Woods actually brings it up, and Jeff explains it.
Okay. I
You
was
know,
just curious
so
about the timing of it because my memory of the situation was I thought he gave that speech and then a week later Charlottesville happened because I had never heard that
Did.
phrase before Charlottesville. And I thought he said that before Charlottesville. The
He
exact
did.
timing is,
I'm pretty sure he did.
but it
Yeah.
was, I mean, he couldn't have known that Charlottesville was going to happen. And they say that was a dog whistle to the far right. And I don't know if that's true or not. I don't, was it a pure
No, it wasn't
coincidence?
clearly. No, he was saying it. I mean, if you hear the speech and you hear him talk about what, like, he's just saying this matters to some people. Like, not everyone's a libertarian and understands libertarian ways. People still fall back on God and nation and blood and soil. Like, people fall back on that. Like let's not keep our head in the sand. Like, this is how people are. And like that's he said it like just like that. And people are like, oh my God, he said the words blood and soil. Like, oh my
Well,
God.
I'm gonna have to re-listen to it, Phil. My recollection of it was that he was saying those things are important, not that he was saying some people think those things are important.
Dude, even in the comments section, the guy who was blowing us up, thinking that he was, making a scene or whatever, even he said it in his direct quote. He said it matters to some people in the end of the quote. There's the end.
Mhm.
It matters to people. Quote. You know what I mean? So like, even there, even in his criticism, he still managed to make my point.
Oh, he's also. Oh, this must be one of the idiot brigade,
Loser brigade.
or was it the loser brigade?
I don't know.
Well, he's pointing out how
Yeah.
Tom Woods spoke at a Neo-Confederate League of the South gathering.
Oh my God, this has to be a bot. Like he has to be a bot.
I mean, I knew
Like,
I
These are
knew
things that
that.
have been debunked over and
Yeah,
over.
I know. So he's
That hasn't
probably
been
just doing
debunked. He
trolling.
did speak at a League of the
Well, I
South
mean, okay,
gathering.
not debunked, but explained.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that was before it got taken over by racists and made into like
Right.
a complete like white nationalist thing.
Um,
I
I
mean,
don't know about that, Phil.
No,
It was.
like no,
Read
like,
it. Just read his
yeah.
explanation of it.
Yeah, I mean, the libertarian position has always been supportive of secession. I mean, Rothbard says like all the way down to the individual level. So,
But that's the thing.
you
He
know,
went there to speak about secession.
With
He wasn't
Jeffrey
there to
Tucker.
speak about. He wasn't there to speak about like the white pride or, you know.
we do have. I'll tell you this: as a movement, there are an awful lot of coincidences, right? Like I remember, I think Richard Spencer introduced Ron Paul at an event one time. Before he became a figurehead in the alt right. So like, there's a lot of, and you had Chris Cantwell, who was a very famous ANCAP, had a radio station. He was on Free Talk Live before he became a leader in the alt right. So Chase Rachels is another one. Like it's just coincidence after coincidence of this guy converted and now
Dude,
turns out he's a white nationalist.
did you just call Cantwell a leader in the alt right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, he has a popular radio show. He was sort of the face of them in that documentary on Vice, and I would say that's accurate.
I don't know, man.
Certainly no official title, but I mean,
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
look, there is.
I'm not saying that Cantwell isn't alt right. Like, I think Cantwell is horrible personally.
I don't know if he's a leader. Yeah, I mean, he was.
But I don't think he's a leader. I just think he's a fat dude with a webcam.
all right.
I mean, it's just like streamed it up and somehow like found
Prominent figure. Are you comfortable with that? Prominent figure.
He was. He's not.
He still
anymore.
is. He still is.
He's still
Everybody
famous for
knows.
being the crying
Libertarian
Nazi,
circles.
right?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
famous.
Yeah, but he's famous for alt-right people and people with like Pepe the Frog profile pictures. Like he's not famous to anyone who's actually a libertarian. And I get the whole point of like, yeah, there are some coincidences, but you know what? There's also a lot of coincidences too with the Democrat Party and with the Republican Party. But yet it always gets put on libertarians as somehow like it's just exclusive to us. And I think it's a I would say it's a constructed narrative, but it's a used narrative against people against libertarianism. And I think that's completely perpetuated. And anytime a libertarian starts to make noise anywhere, they shut it down with, oh, look at these connections. Oh, look at this. As soon as Maj starts getting up and popular, got to take him down.
Yeah, I mean, what they try to do is they try to get triggered, right? And then they just use that to just like end the conversation altogether.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's racist. Nope, nope, can't hear anything more. Put my blinders up. He's racist. He's racist. I
La
can't hear
la
anything
la.
more. Exactly. Like
Don't
that's
don't
how
forget
people are.
don't forget Augustus Invictus.
Okay, you just mentioned two, three people in this entire thing. Okay, there was literally a Ku Klux Klan member was freaking into the Senate as what in the year 2000. Like he was a Democrat, but we dismissed that. No one talks about that except for just a bunch of you know Republicans like types who mentioned that. I mean, think about it. The whole Democrat. I mean, at one point, the Ku Klux Klan ran the Democratic Party, and then it ran the Republican Party. And it's never been associated with the Libertarian Party except for like 3 or 4 people. And then it's somehow now it's a lot of coincidences. I'm not saying you were saying that, Kyle, but like there's a lot of
He
people
was
who like
saying
to
it
do
though.
that. Well, I mean, he's not saying he's playing devil's advocate here,
Yeah,
and I know he's not being mean about it like some other people are. Like so that's what drives me up the
What do you
wall is
what do you mean other people?
black people.
Oh no.
wow.
No, that was
No, what do you
horrible.
think I
dude.
mean? What do you think I
Horrible.
mean? Come on,
I don't know, man. I was just fucking with you.
sounds like it. But
Did you
it's
guys
just-
Did you
Go
guys
on.
catch Jeff's statement there? He was like, what we need is a political party that ignores cultural issues and exclusively focuses on economics. I wanted to ask him what he thought the libertarian political strategy should be. Um, I think the LP alone is having enough trouble. I don't know that there's room for a fourth party, but he's welcome to try. I'm just curious. We have the GOP strategy, the LP strategy, the Free State Project strategy, and then I guess the no voting, do nothing strategy, and maybe another one would be form a new party. And it sounded like he favors forming a new party that's exclusively focused on spending and debt.
Well, I mean, the Libertarian Party can be that and say, hey, at the same time, be like, yes, that's our main focus because this is the biggest issues that's going on in this world right now is the war and economics. But at the same time, it doesn't matter if you're in a relationship when you have 3 wives or you're gay or straight or what you identify as. Like that's whatever because as long as you're not forcing on other people, it's fine. But we need to focus and come together about people are dying, people are being murdered, and it's all being done with our dollars. Like that needs to be the focus. And then
Well, yeah, but that's where I'm
Federal
not a
Reserve
fan of
scheme.
and obviously he's going to say this because he's in the Mises Institute, but like, I don't know how successful a party that entirely focuses on economics is going to be.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not popular
most
because
people are not interested in that. Most people, you got to be kind of a nerd. You got to be kind of like us, and be interested in like economics and the Fed, like,
Well, you just named 2 economic things.
huh? That's what I'm saying. You have to be a nerd
Okay.
to be into that. Most people aren't nerds. Most people are not gonna. You're gonna start talking about that shit, and they're just gonna fucking go white,
Do you think we should,
but see,
you think we should go fishing for leftists with SJW issues?
No. I think we need to. No, I think we need to focus on the stuff that a lot of people. We've talked about this a million times. We focus on the war and the immorality of war, and we focus we attack it from sort of the moral, pulling on the moral intuitions of people that are coming to realize that war is bad, that
war is bad. The drug war
is bad.
Yeah.
That mass incarceration is bad. Like all these things that people are, the moral compass is starting to point in the right direction. All these issues for everybody instead of just like a few people. Those are the things that I think we need to sort of occupy ourselves with. I just, I appreciate there being the Mises Institute. I appreciate that, but I don't think for politics per se, and we could talk about the validity of all that, but I don't think like that's the strategy. I think the strategy is appeal to people's moral intuitions on things like war, drugs, etc. Excuse me, and see where that gets you.
I think so. I mean, when you talk about wars and then you talk about the drug war, those are my like number 1 and number 2 issues. But at the same time, it's like I think the Federal Reserve and economics are very important because it's like
they're definitely important.
As long as we have the Federal Reserve, we're paying for the wars and the drug wars, which are my number 1, number 2 issues. So we're printing money. We're well, at the same time, we're devaluing our savings. And when I say we, I shouldn't say we. The Federal Reserve is printing money
Hmm.
that is devaluing our savings.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think
So
even as a dumb kid, like I just remember just thinking like I wasn't like into politics. I mean, it was like maybe like 10 or 11 where I was first found out. Like I think my mom might have told me, she was like, yeah, it's not, the dollar's not backed by anything. It's just it's backed in our faith in it. And I'm like, even then, like I didn't care about politics at the time, but I was still like, oh, that's weird. That
Mm.
doesn't make sense. Like, and that still kind of like presented a question for me, which I don't think everyone just sort of accepted but never had a question before. So I think there is something to be said, like if we get these questions out early. And I think the problem with the third party, Kyle, like we were talking about, like the fourth party, is we don't have a second party. Like that whole thing's so true. That whole thing that Ron Paul says is like we don't even have a second party. It's just one people who on they just have two different names who are blocking out any other dissent. And I think getting on some type of debate stage with a Republican or Democrat would be huge for any party. And I think whether it's a Green Party or bread and roses,
Yeah.
whatever.
I think that's the wrong way to think about it. I really do think Democrats and Republicans are oppose each other and have some different ideas, but obviously there's a lot more overlap than libertarians would really like, and certain things are just they are 100% in agreement. They agree on Social Security, they agree on Medicare, they agree on the Fed, they agree on the wars, they agree on public education, the welfare state. So there's a ton of overlap, and that's why it's so easy, to say, well, you guys are really the same, but they really do hate each other. I mean, there
They
is,
do.
yeah.
They do. I think the politicians might get along better than what, say, some red guy and blue guy on the street meet each other and start arguing.
Well, they get
Of
along on
course,
all the important issues, right?
the
Well,
most
a
horrible
lot of
issues.
yeah,
important
They
issues,
they
but
they get
yeah.
along when it comes to increasing the deficit. They get along when it comes to signing on for more war. They get along when it comes to, giving themselves pay
Quarantined.
raises, quarantining. I mean, they get along on a lot of
Right.
things on a lot of the things that we care about as
Yeah.
libertarians, and I think that's where the second party thing comes into play because, yeah, I mean, okay, they disagree on, I don't know, welfare to a degree, maybe.
Yeah.
Certain religious things, maybe. I don't know, like
Abortion.
abortion, but
They
like,
disagree on abortion. They
yeah,
disagree on let me think here, guns and drugs,
sure,
right? Once Democrats tend to be more okay with drugs, and Republicans tend to be more okay with guns. I think in both cases, neither supports as much freedom as libertarians would support,
right,
right? Libertarians are sort of like anything goes.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I guess Ron Paul's point is just that within these two major parties, yeah, of course they're different in some regards, or else you know they wouldn't exist independently. But the important differences just aren't really there, and they're not there to the degree that is what we would want,
Yeah.
or to the degree that we are different.
Another thing I didn't get to bring up when Jeff was on was when Ron Paul left Congress, both times he kind of left in a rage. I felt like
He did.
I think
Yeah,
he
so
either wrote
did.
a book or a speech after the first time, kind of screw you guys, you're all corrupt bastards, I'm out of here. And then he did the same thing when he retired for good in 2012 or whatever year that was, his last
Yeah, he called
term.
them a bunch of psychopaths.
Yeah, he did like a 45-minute speech on the floor, condemning all of them, and really, I mean, maybe that's the wrong way to put it, because I think he really was meaning to be constructive and meaning to be like, look, these are the things we need to get together. We need to get our act together on these things, and these are where we need to improve on. So it wasn't just throwing them under the bus, but a little bit of it was, and well deserved, I would add.
yeah. So, dude, I'm just noticing here that we're just about running out of time. Phil, wasn't there something that you had to say, dude?
Uh, did I?
Dude, weren't you gonna tell us? Weren't you gonna tell us about that awesome podcast?
Oh, you want to talk about conversations about freedom? Okay. Yeah, dude. More Bob. I don't think a new. I don't think new. He's dropped a new podcast since the last time we were on, but I think he had on Jacob Hornberger, and I know he was on Johnny Adams' podcast too. So Moral Bob's been everywhere. So everyone should go check out after you're done listening to us, of course. You should go check out Conversations About Freedom. Go to the Liberty Podcast Ranker and give him an upvote. He needs some help. He's kind of down low on the list, just starting out. So go over and check him out and give him your support.
Hell yeah,
All
bro.
right. Okay, and yeah, I want to go over to after hours after this because there's like some stuff I want to say. So you guys are all free to do that?
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
down.
I got
Cool.
another beer here.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So if you want to follow us on over to the After Hours program, hit us up at patreon.com/punk rock libertarians and contribute a minimum of $1 per month. If you can contribute more, that's great. But if you could do just $1 per month, that's majorly appreciated. And yeah, the After Hours, it really helps keep us going, so we appreciate that. We also have t-shirts over at libertariancountry.com. If you type in the code PRL or the code PRL podcast, you will receive a 10% discount. Yeah. Sorry. I'm a little intoxicated. Until next time, live free.
Or die.
Jared, you like hesitated to say or die there.